Hi, Linda. Welcome to the course. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Madison. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, thanks. So the first question I want to ask you is, well, I guess it's not really a question, but if you can tell us a little bit about your journey with your relationship with food and your body and kind of how you came to be doing the work that you're doing today.
That's a great question. It's kind of like, how do I narrow it down? So, I think we have to go all the way back to kind of get where we are today, which is really going back to the origins of body shame, because I've learned that's where all of this really starts. It can be really tempting to really focus on when I started dieting or when I started manipulating my food, but I think I wouldn't be doing any of that if I didn't somewhere get the seed planted that my body was not right in
Right.
some way,
Yeah.
not good enough, could be better. And so I think that for me started really early, like grade school early. I have always benefited from thin privilege. I want to be really clear about that from the start. So
For our,
even though,
for my
go ahead.
students who don't know what thin privilege is, would you mind like explaining that just a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the word privilege, I think, is a really, it's kind of like the basis of it, which is like an unearned advantage. So, because I have always been in a medium straight sized body, I've never not been able to find clothes that fit me or fit in an airplane seat or have a medical provider, use my weight as the sole focus of any appointment. Those are examples of thin privilege, but there are many, many, many examples of it. So it's really just when you live in a straight sized or traditional small or medium sized body, you tend to benefit from a lot of very normalized things that people in smaller bodies don't even really think about.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that was my experience. I never had any oppression or discrimination or violence towards me and my body, but I definitely got the message very early on that my body wasn't good enough. It wasn't right. It wasn't thin enough. It could be thinner. It was different. It was less desirable.
Yeah, and I think that's like a message that so many of us get. It's become almost normalized. It's like you're kind of the rare breed if you aren't buying into those beliefs.
Yeah, and that's something that I like to bring into the conversation because I think a lot of people that may not have experienced overt fat shaming, or overt fat phobia think that these principles don't necessarily apply to them, but you don't have to be actively dieting or in a larger body to be negatively impacted. It's not the same, right? It's very different for people in different size bodies, but fat phobia affects us all in
Mhm.
society.
Yeah.
And so we really, I think, people in smaller bodies, or people that don't have clinical eating disorders, or those people that don't kind of find themselves on the receiving end of a lot of really negative messaging, we still are absorbing these messages. And it's still contributing to our desire to want to manipulate our food and body.
Yeah. Yeah. So I totally agree. It's like that internalized stigma really can impact us all.
Yeah. So that's really how my story started. I didn't even actively start dieting until my late teens. So thankfully, I avoided dieting really from a very young age. But eventually, I found the tools to try to control my body. And it started, like I said, my late teens, through my early 20s and into my mid 20s. And then it sort of morphed. So I was more of a traditional dieter. I was using things like diet pills and restricting foods and counting things and over exercising and using caffeine or other appetite suppressants, strictly for the goal of shrinking my body size. And then it sort of morphed. And when that was around like the early to mid 2000s, when diet culture started shifting a little bit. Traditional diets weren't so like cool or in vogue anymore. And we see what we now refer to as kind of the wellness diet taking shape. And so it morphed into, okay, I'm not cutting out carbs because I want to lose weight anymore. It's I'm cutting out carbs because I want to be healthier, or I have food intolerances, or it's healthier for my gut, or it's, grains are bad for these 5 reasons. I read it in a book, so it definitely morphed in my late 20s into something more what I would call like the wellness diet, which is a term that I learned from Christy Harrison.
Yeah, and for my students who don't know Christy, hopefully you do by now, but she has a podcast called Food Psych, and I know that was a huge help for me, and it sounds like it was for you too, and it's a great resource, so I encourage everyone to go listen to it. Linda actually has an episode if you want to go listen to her episode. But okay, anyways, where were we? With the wellness diet, but basically the wellness diet is like diet culture is like modern guys today. Like it used to be diets, but then now diets are not the cool thing, so now we're the like wellness, but a lot of times it's just the same shit packaged up with new branding and terminology. So I guess one question for you is, how have you found like ways to be able to tell when something is a wellness diet, like or playing into diet culture, from something that might actually be true wellness?
It's a great question. Yeah, because it's very tricky. I think even the word wellness has sort of morphed. I think it kind of jumped the shark, for lack of a better term, I think when Weight Watchers went through their rebranding last year. So I think that's when people really started to be like, oh, it's when I started becoming uncomfortable using that word in certain situations, because I think most people started to assume wellness was intrinsically linked with weight loss. So when I'm working with clients or even just doing my own work, when I'm trying to decide, okay, is this choice that I'm making a health promoting behavior, or is it rooted in diet culture, even though there's layer upon layer upon layer covering that fact? I think the simplest way I've been able to decipher those things is coming back to, what is my intention? Is my intention rooted in a place of kindness and love and compassion? Or is my intention rooted in a place of fear or manipulation or shame or guilt?
Yeah, I feel like that's a distinction that like it almost all comes back to, and that like that can apply to like so many different things in our lives. So when we can like learn it in this area, I kind of can just extrapolate into other areas, and we can be like constantly tuning in and asking ourselves that question. So I love that you said that.
Yeah. And when I go back to like, my story kind of follows a timeline when there was like these big changes in my life. So one was like a big career change. I actually was so invested in the wellness diet that I decided to quit my very successful career, and totally realign my entire life with essentially being like obsessed with food, and helping other people be obsessed with food, like that was kind of my thing. And so I kind of think back to that was a big indicator that maybe my intention was a little bit rooted in fear, a little bit rooted in anxiety and obsession. And then in the midst of all of that, we did a big move across the country, and I found myself alone in a new town in California where the wellness diet is a very alive and well. And it was just kind of like pouring gasoline on it. Like it took something that was already problematic and just kind of pushed it into the next level of fear-based. I mean, at the time, I don't think I would have said it was fear-based, but looking back, it was definitely.
Yeah.
Old posts will pop up on Facebook or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. I really have to practice compassion for myself though, because I know how scared I was and I know how invested I was. It was so much wrapped up in my identity. I think that's another key indicator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it's like, and that's, it's so scary to leave behind that identity when you're the healthy girl or the foodie girl or the like whatever diet, like if you're the paleo person, like that can become like an I am statement, and then so wrapped up in your identity and so much harder to let go.
Yeah, and I have to put that in perspective because most of the people I work with or my friends or family, they didn't have this huge life altering like I'm going to quit my career and make healthy food my life. So
Mhm.
they might not recognize, like for me they could be like, "Oh yeah, I could see that could be a problem." But it's
Yeah.
really saying like, "Okay, you don't have to quit your job and become a health coach to recognize that maybe your obsession with food has gone off the rails a little bit." Like
Yes.
it's very common. It's
Yeah.
extraordinarily common.
And it's become like so normalized in our culture. Like, why do you think that our culture basically like normalizes disordered eating? Obviously, no one is saying, here's a disordered eating tip, go do it. It's masked as the wellness diet, but a lot of times, like, these like diets and things like that are masking their advice as wellness when really it can be disordered eating tips. So like, why do you think it is that that's become so like normalized in our culture?
It's a great question. I mean, I have so many thoughts on this. I'm trying to think how I can make it cohesive. I mean, I think this is a good time to introduce the term healthism because it can be crucial in understanding why this wellness diet has taken such hold. I think fat phobia is alive and well. Like, I don't think anyone's claiming that that's really gone anywhere. And fat phobia is essentially just the fear of fat, whether it's fat on our own bodies, fat on other people's bodies, fat as a cultural, we can, people are like afraid of saying that it's okay to have people in larger bodies in this society. And it's alive and well. I think it's people don't want to admit that that's really what's going on. And so this healthism culture has sort of emerged out of that alongside of the wellness culture, which is really moralizing health and health status and health behaviors as I'm a good person if I do these things, and I'm a not so good person if I do these things. And people want to be good people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think people really at its core, I think it is a reaction to anxiety. People want a sense of control. They want a way to ease their anxiety. They want to know how they're not going to get X, Y, and Z disease. And they have been fed the story that if you do these things, then you will get these benefits.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it all kind of too like ties back to the desire for weight loss, because in a fat phobic society, then what's really behind that is like our society's desire to be smaller and thinner and have that um, body that's quote unquote perfect. So like, do you feel like we have to let go of the pursuit of weight loss and trying to change our bodies in order to really make peace with food in our bodies?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just actually wrote a piece on this because it's something that comes up so often with clients where they have heard of intuitive eating or health at every size or the non-diet approach, and there's something inside of them that either intellectually understands like this makes sense, or even I think what is even more common is that they just say, I just cannot physically diet anymore. I cannot restrict my food. My relationship with food has gotten totally out of control. I've signed up for this program or that program a dozen times and nothing seems. So there's this cognitive dissonance where they're like, something's not fitting together.
Mm-hmm.
And so they seek out help, or they go read a book, or they start following people on Instagram. And I think they get confused or maybe disheartened when they believe that in order for me to heal my relationship with food or my body or engage in health promoting behaviors because I love and respect myself, that means I have to be totally fine with the way that my body is, and I have to be totally cool with gaining a bunch of weight, and I have to be, and that's part of it, right? I think we have to have these larger conversations about why we fear weight gain so much and why the conditioning that we've had and the messages that we're seeing. But I encourage people to meet themselves with compassion and say, you're not shallow or vain or wrong for wanting to benefit from thin privilege. Of
Right.
course you want those things.
Yes.
And
Awesome.
it's not a prerequisite to be at total peace and complete acceptance and in complete love with your body in order to start working on healing your relationship with food or your body.
Yeah, exactly. Like wherever we're at with kind of our mindset around our weight, we can start making those little like shifts in our mindset and our behaviors to get us to a place where we have like a healthy, happy, balanced relationship with food in our bodies.
Yeah, intuitive eating and health at every size, they invite us to place the pursuit and the prioritizing of weight loss on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
There's not an expectation that it's going to completely disappear, or we're not going to have lots of conversations about it, or we're not going to have negative body image thoughts pop up, or the desire to lose weight. When we see a friend that's lost a bunch of weight, they're not expecting us to magically never have the decades of conditioning in our brain saying, you want that too.
Exactly. So I appreciate what you bringing up in the intuitive eating book. They talk about putting weight loss on the back burner, and I've gotten a lot of questions about that. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean in 5 years I can try to lose weight again?
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of people kind of like struggle with that concept. So what does like putting it on the back burner mean to you, and how did you interpret that?
One of my favorite, and I wish I could remember where I heard this, but one of my favorite definitions of overwhelm, and I often think that is a word that people use just when they're in their day-to-day lives. I think in general we are overwhelmed, but especially when it comes to relearning intuitive eating or understanding these non-diet concepts, or, all these different terms like body liberation or fat acceptance, or it feels overwhelming because it's so many new ideas coming at you. It's so many different ways of thinking. It's truly paradigm shifting. It's shifting your entire paradigm. And it can feel quite overwhelming. And so I like to offer to people that one of my favorite definitions of overwhelm is the lack of clear priority. So when you spend some time really getting clear on what my priority is, it could be in this moment. So like in this moment, my priority is talking to Madison, right? I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not doing anything else. Today, what is my priority? This week, what is my priority? And when we talk about putting weight loss on the back burner, it's simply inviting ourselves to make the priority in our life right now, understanding, deconstructing, getting curious about our relationship with food. Mm-hmm. And understanding that if we try to prioritize weight loss in addition to that, we are going to become overwhelmed because
it's totally conflicting ideas. And when we're like pursuing weight loss, it completely like almost destroys our ability to actually listen and trust and honor our bodies, because we're clouded by these different priorities. That's such a good way to look at it.
It'd be like me trying to book airfare for a trip I'm going to while I'm having this conversation with you. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. Neither one of them are going to turn out well. It's going to be really obvious that I wasn't present. And so it's really just inviting us to be present in the moment with this priority right now, and understanding like you have full autonomy over your body and your choices. Mm-hmm. I never try to convert or convince or, change someone's mind. It's like, can we just get curious about this together? And can you just prioritize this?
Yeah. And I love what you said about like the invitation to get curious. And it's so funny that you brought up the like word specifically overwhelm. I was just listening to a podcast like an hour ago, and they were saying how like this lady, she was saying she just hates the word overwhelm, and she wanted to like invite her listeners to just remove the word overwhelm from their vocabularies. And I thought it was so funny that you brought it up as like meant to be.
Yeah. It's important for us to recognize when we're feeling it, because that's a really clear sign of, oh, maybe I haven't spent some time getting clear on my priorities. Mm-hmm. And I mean, one of the best ways I do it when I'm feeling overwhelmed is I just take, a couple deep breaths and just remind myself what's going on in the present moment. What is my intention for today? What is my intention for my healing work with my body and food? one of the things that you and I had kind of talked about is like, how do we deal with like bad body image thoughts, right? And that's something that's in this realm of really giving ourselves compassion and being super realistic about the fact that you're going to have negative body image thoughts. It's going to happen. And you're not a failure. You're not. Evelyn Tribole has been posting this a lot on Instagram of like, you cannot fail at intuitive eating, right? This work is all about curiosity and compassion. So when I have a negative body image thought day, you know, depending on what's going on in my life, to me, it's an example of like, okay, Linda, where are you feeling overwhelmed? Where are you feeling anxiety? What way are you trying to get back? Your brain is so smart and it wants to go back to things that have worked. Like in the past, Linda, when you were feeling overwhelmed, you became hyper-focused on your body. Let's do that again.
Right.
And I go, no.
That was distracting enough to make me forget about the overwhelm. But it's about like realizing that that I have compassion for myself, that coping mechanism was what I used at that time in my life. But now I'm choosing to take care of myself better and choose coping mechanisms that will really serve me. And so it's like, what do I really need in this moment? How can I give that to myself? And is obsessing over my food or changing my body, like, is that going to get to this underlying feeling and really like help me cope with that? And likely the answer is probably not.
Yeah. And I mean, Christy talks about this on her podcast too. Like when those thoughts pop up, I don't think I've met any professional that works in this realm that has claimed that they never have a negative thought about their body ever anymore.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I'd like to meet them.
Yeah. And even if we went and lived on a deserted island where we weren't bombarded with these messages anymore, I mean, that would be amazing. We wouldn't be further contributing to it, but we still have however long of our lived experience of living in a society that every day we're just seeing messages of, you'll be happier if you lose weight. You'll be more successful. You'll be more attractive. I mean, we can only shield ourselves so much from this.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Christy, she says like, I love her response when she's like, when those thoughts pop up, I kind of smile and kind of laugh to myself and go, oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that funny how those thoughts are still popping up? It's so funny. Oh, Christy, she uses so I go, oh, Linda, there's those thoughts again. Okay, I'm going to choose not to engage with them today.
I love that. I feel like that's super helpful. In one of my lessons in the course, we kind of like talk about how to talk back to kind of like that, like bad body image, like critic in your head in like a fun way. And I kind of feel like that just like plays into it. And it's like, yeah, I see you, but like, we're not going to go there today. Like,
yeah,
I'm not down to like make myself feel worse. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. Like, and I don't shame or blame myself for having those thoughts. And I really try to even be even more careful with the language. I don't shame or blame my brain for having those thoughts because I am the one that's responding to it. Linda is the one that's saying back to it, no, I choose not to engage with that today. It's really my brain that's conjuring up these old habits and thought patterns. And the great thing about the brain is that it's trainable. It's plastic, right? Like the more you do this, the less it will happen. It feels really overwhelming in the beginning. You might be having to do it, every 20 seconds sometimes, but the more you do it, the less often it will happen.
Yeah. Your brain starts to like realize like, oh, well, this is my new thought pattern. Like, this is how I'm going to think. And when I think this way, all these like good feelings like radiate throughout my body. So like, let's keep it up.
Yeah, I'm happier when I talk back to the voices in my head. I mean, it sounds kind of funny when you say it like that, but it's true.
Yeah. Okay. So next I want to bring it back to your story a little bit and ask you, what was like the one thing that was the biggest struggle for you in your journey of healing your relationship with food in your body?
That's a great question. I think, so I'll give kind of a broad answer and then I'll give two specific answers. So for me, I I don't want to say backwards, because I think this is actually more common,
Mhm.
but I was introduced to intuitive eating and the non-diet approach first. I mean, I knew about body positivity. I knew that was a thing. I knew about body image work, but I was in a smaller body. So my priority in that moment when I sought out help, was my relationship with food has become unsustainable. I kept cutting out foods. I mean, I had a list 3 pages long of things I wasn't eating and a list of things I was eating. I remember one time saying to my husband, we used to love to go out to eat. And I said, I honestly did break down in tears a couple times at restaurants, but I said to him, when I look at a menu, it's not a menu of things I can have. It's a menu of things I can't have.
Yeah, it's so scary when we like create so many of those food rules for ourselves, because I can completely relate to that. Like, when I was really struggling with my relationship with food, I had as many food rules as you, and I just kind of got to the point where I was like, what the hell? There's nothing in this world that's safe for me to eat. There's nothing left. It's all bad. I can't have
Yeah.
anything. And you kind of just like get to this point where you're like, oh my gosh, there's nothing. Like, you feel like there's nothing that's safe for you. And that's such a scary place to be in. But for me, it also was kind of like a reality check. Like, hang on.
Yeah.
Like, if there's no food that's okay for me to eat, like, something about this is not really adding up.
That's exactly. I mean, it took a long time. And it's funny because I have friends and family members now, especially some of them that had listened to the podcast episode, that they're like, yeah, we were worried about you, but you seemed so confident. You seemed so sure. You didn't seem to mind.
Mhm.
And so it's just funny how hindsight is 2020. So I got to the point where I was like, my relationship with food is no longer sustainable. Any sort of health benefit I thought I was gleaning from eating that way. And I had some really significant struggles, right? And now I've learned, especially through doing some training with Marcy Evans. So if you have any clients or people that are watching that struggle with legit, real digestion issues, I've now learned that was, again, pouring gasoline on the fire. Me becoming so restrictive and fear-based around food was actually perpetuating the problem. But, I just got to the point where I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to find something. And that's when I discovered intuitive eating, and it just clicked. And so I started doing the work of intuitive eating first, and it was really life-changing for me, and it was completely a game changer. It made so much sense. All of my sort of spiritual beliefs or what I had learned about biology and anatomy, everything clicked. Every time I tried to poke a hole in it or find something that I was like, but what about this? But what about this?
Mhm.
I was always met with an answer that made sense to me, or an opportunity. So that was really my clicking moment. And then what happened is that through healing my relationship with food, I started to feel my feelings essentially, and all of my body shame stuff came kind of like rising to the surface. And I go, oh, now I got to deal with the body image stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that happens for so many people, because at first it seemingly is about the food and the need for control or feeling out of control. But when you start like unpacking that, yeah, it can bring up some emotions that you didn't even realize were there. But I feel like it can be good, because for you, it seems like it was a clear signal to then what you needed to do next to get to the next part of your journey in healing.
It was the timeline was, of course, exactly how it needed to be, because that's how things work. And so I was then able to really kind of dig into the body image stuff. And that's one of the messages that I talk a lot about with my clients, is saying, like, intuitive eating won't cure your negative body image issues. It helps you heal your relationship with food, and it very much lays the foundation for you to then do some work, because there's so much interoceptive awareness work and having to feel your body, and needing to learn how to feel your feelings, and needing to let go of the desire for weight loss. And when people are invited to do that, they then have to kind of look at the tiger in the eye and say, it's terrifying for me to let go of my pursuit or desire for weight loss, because then I'm going to have to feel all these feelings that I don't want to feel.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think it would have been like the process may have been a little bit smoother or easier had you kind of came across the body image work first and then tried to heal your relationship with food?
That's a great question. I've thought about this many times, and I have had the pleasure of working with a couple clients who are living in larger bodies. So they have been presented with or forced, or, they've had no choice but to do a lot of this body image work, this desire to want to lose weight work first. Like, it's not uncommon for me to work with someone who has been maybe in therapy for years working on their body shame.
Yeah.
And it's then they find out about intuitive eating. So I think it can work either way. It's all about working with practitioners and people that are skilled to kind of meet you where you are and not try to force you down a road that you're not ready to go down yet. So, I think it can go either way. It just depends on what your reality of life is.
Yeah. And I feel like everyone has a different path and a different journey and kind of like what they land on and what works for them. And yeah, I feel like it's good to be open to the different possibilities.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so important that we don't shame or blame or judge the desire to want to lose weight, because depending on what our life circumstances are, that can be a real life changing opportunity for people. They really foresee, like, I would be able to ride on a plane more comfortably. I would be able to buy clothes that fit me. I would be able to, and I'm like, I really have to meet people and listen to their lived experience, because that isn't my lived experience. And so as a coach, I really have to just learn from them and say, tell me about this. Tell me what that feels like. Tell me how frustrating it's been. And also, will continuing to diet ultimately give you what you want? And for some people, they choose that, right? For some people, that is a choice that they make, and I have to respect that. Whatever people choose to do with their body is their choice.
Yeah, and all we can do is invite them to these practices and tools that we hope will allow them to have like more compassion and love and confidence in themselves.
Yeah, it's great. So to circle back, I was saying kind of that's like the broader, that was kind of one of the struggles I had was with when I started learning and practicing intuitive eating, and then I kind of got hit in the face with the body image stuff that I knew was there, but I was like, I'll deal with that later. Let me like figure out how to eat bread again, that was hard. And then I think two tangible things that come up over and over and over again with people is photographs and clothes. Mm-hmm. I think those are the two big, because we can talk about these things intellectually, and people, I don't know if you've had this experience, but people say, I was feeling really good and then I saw a picture of myself, or I was feeling really confident and then I went to go get dressed today, my pants don't fit anymore. And those are two big, huge triggers, or I love the term that the people over at Beauty Redefined use. They call them disruptions. Like, those are big disruptions for us where we are having our own experience and we're feeling really strong and confident, but then something external happens or we see or experience, and that kind of throws us back down the spiral again.
Yeah. So what do you think are some like really useful tools in working through those moments where we've seen a picture of ourselves and we're like, and all like you were feeling great, you're maybe having fun with your friends, and then you see the picture and you're like, ooh, just kind of feel bad, or maybe you felt fine and then you like put on a pair of jeans and they feel a little tighter than normal. So like, what do you think are some good ways that we can work through those moments?
There's a lot of different ways. I like to get curious with people and ask them, like, what do you think? Because I think our gut instincts or our intuition knows more than we give it credit for. So what might have worked for me? Some things that worked for me is I, for a while, had to be really careful about mirrors and body checking and photographs. And because I was still so new and I was still learning. If you're learning to ride a bike, you're not going to go hop into like a BMX course, right? Like, you're still learning. So I was like, if I'm learning French, I'm not going to go to France into a village that nobody speaks English and have to rely on my like broken French. I'm going to wait till I'm a little bit more confident. So I think just being really gentle with ourselves and realistic, and expecting things that are going to come up and not being kind of hit over the face with them when they happen, and just saying, again, it always comes back to compassion, meeting yourself with compassion. Like, can you look at that photograph and look at all the people you were around that were having fun? Or can you look at that photograph and look at your smile? And for some people, the opposite is really helpful. They can look at those things or have, like clothes shopping, for example. It's like, we want to, I love Brene Brown's, thoughts on blame. We want to blame somebody when we're feeling, she's like, blame is the, how does she say it? It's so brilliant. Like, blame is the release of uncomfortable emotions, or the outburst of uncomfortable emotions. Like, if I go into a store and I can't find any pants that fit me, I'm pissed and I want to blame someone. And really who I should be blaming is the store or the fashion industry, or, cultural norms. But instead I blame myself. And I go, I can't believe I've done this to myself. I can't believe my body is doing this to me. And so for some people, anger can be a really powerful way to get through those things. I can't believe that when I'm looking at this picture of me from my wedding, I'm being bombarded with thoughts that I've been conditioned with, that I'm not good enough, instead of looking at this beautiful picture from my wedding and thinking how lucky I am to have all these amazing friends and family, and that I'm marrying the love of my life.
Yeah. And I think a big thing with that too, that reminded me of, is like thinking about your values. Like, maybe if it was a picture from your wedding, then maybe being married and being in a loving relationship is something that's really valuable to you. So like, how can you like have compassion for yourself and for the picture? Like, that was something I valued so much. Like, I'm going to just accept that and have compassion for it, because that wedding was so valuable to me. And like, that's what matters. It doesn't matter how I perceive my appearance. It matters that I was doing something that was really valuable and fulfilling to me.
Yeah. And again, to quote Christy Harrison again, she talks about diet culture, which diet mentality is part of that. It's a life thief. So when I look at a picture of me and my nephews from Disneyland, and the first thing I want to look at is how my arms look, or how my legs look, or if I have a double chin or not, I'm being robbed of the experience of looking at the picture and thinking what a wonderful day I had with my nephews.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is a life thief. But that goes back to like getting angry. Like, you can get angry at it, that it was a life thief, and be like, wait a minute, are these thoughts serving me? Is this in alignment with my values? And how do I want to feel? And what are some things I can do that will bring me like closer to the feeling I'm after? And is this bringing me any joy by like sitting here and worrying about this? And it's also too like, all the time that you spend thinking about food or your body or criticizing yourself, like, what if you were able to lessen that? Then what would you have space for in your life?
Yes.
It's so exciting. That's like the ultimate like goal with healing food in your body, is like, okay, it's great. Now I don't feel so terrible about my body and I can be chill around food. But really, once you make that space, that's when like a whole world of opportunity can open up for you, because you have all that space. You can spend more time with your family, be more present with your kids, like pursue your passions, like all different kinds of things.
Yeah. And that goes back to the wellness site, right? I think sometimes we are subconsciously or even unconsciously terrified of facing things, whether it's our career or our relationship status or our friendships or our hobbies. If we don't feel strong in those areas, we know that being obsessed with our food and weight loss and exercise is a great way to take up a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And so then we don't have to. So it depends, first it definitely is diet culture and marketing and media and people that are profiting off of this. And then I think we've kind of bought into this idea of like, yeah, this is a great way to stay kind of distracted from, and I think it's Naomi Wolf in The Beauty Myth that says dieting is one of the most political one of the most powerful political sedatives,
Yeah.
right? Like a distracted population is an easily manipulated population, and I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said.
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time.
Oh, for sure. And that's exactly what diet culture is doing to us. They're basically like sedating us with these beliefs so that we buy into their money making schemes. And it's a $60 billion industry. So they're glad about it. That's what they're aiming to do. But and it's like, I love that quote. I like see it all the time on Instagram. But it's like, yeah, not even just thinking about for yourself, like what could open up for you with that new space, not feeling obsessed with food in your body anymore, but like collectively as a society, like if more of us can start finding that space, then like what can that like make like, what will that look like? What can we do as a collective group of women to like take back our power and like reclaim our freedom and take back our life that diet culture stole from us?
And I think even wellness culture, right? I think now it's like, I use diet culture all the time, but I'm honestly using wellness culture because wellness culture has swooped in and said, there's a lot of money to be made off of people's insecurities. There's a lot of money to be made for people feeling like they have to wear the cutest outfits to yoga or buy the green drinks or do this 30-day cleanse that then they have to buy all these different foods. Like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of people are cashing in on, I think even more so. I haven't seen the latest numbers because it's hard to quantify wellness culture.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's even a bigger beast than diet culture is.
Oh, for sure. I would not be surprised by that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have one more question for you. I don't want to keep you all day, even though I think we could talk for like 2 hours. But the last question I wanted to ask you is there any piece of advice that you want to give to my students that you wish someone would have given you when you were struggling the most?
That's a great question. And I even thought about this before we talked. Yeah, probably one of the biggest pieces of advice would be think bigger, think broader, right? It is about healing your relationship with food. It is about, one of the principles of intuitive eating is making peace with food. But it's once you can intuitively eat, you can intuitively do anything. Like once you learn these tools of like, what feels good for me? What is a hell yes and what is a hell no? Like what actually leaves me feeling energized and happier and really content, just more at peace. Because you're learning through the methods of food in the beginning, especially if you're reading the intuitive eating workbook or the actual book, but I love the workbook. And it's same with Health at Every Size, right? You're reading Health at Every Size, but Linda Bacon has gone on to write another book and she's got another book coming out. Like these are getting bigger ideas. So it starts with food, but just know that the work you're doing with food is actually going to start benefiting every single part of your life. And that's truly what I hope keeps people motivated, because it is hard. It's really hard. It's super hard. Dieting is really easy in the beginning and it gets harder and harder and harder the longer you do it. Non-diet approach is really hard in the beginning and then gets easier and easier and easier.
Yeah, I love that way of looking at it. And I think that's such a good, happy, exciting note to end on. So thank you so much, Linda. This conversation was amazing. And I know my students are going to get so much value from it.
Thank you so much for having me. I was glad to do it.
Yeah, of course.